The US dollar is dramatically rising. In fact, it has risen more than 7% in November. With constant uncertainty, investors are desperately looking for safe havens. The dollar is seeing the flood rush in. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's look into the dollar today, as well as many geopolitical events. Beginning with this, the dollar was on pace for its best month against the yen since 2009. As signs of a U.S. economic strength spurred bets that monetary tightening will accelerate. Greenback has risen more than 7% in November amid speculation that Donald Trump will pursue reflationary policies. This has been the general accepted notion for what will occur. We'll see how that works out. But that has been basically speculation, and that has led up to this rise, and that has been very clear. As futures signal growing bets that the Fed will follow an interest rate increase in December with additional hikes next year. That is the part where we can't be really sure of, even less sure of the reflationary policies, simply because we've heard them cry wolf over and over again. Now, also wanted to mention here that when you're looking at currencies, you're comparing two together. So is it the yen which has declined, or is it the US dollar which has increased, or is it a bit of both? Remember that whenever you're looking at currencies, they're all traded against each other. US bank report record profit in the third quarter. Now, this is another thing that we've seen constantly, that despite all of the talk that banks have been, reeled in on their powers and all this silliness, it just goes to show you that they'll continue to make record profits because they have derivatives which they create out of thin air and a whole bunch of different garbage. I'm not buying it, and I know you're not either. The nation's commercial banks and savings institutions reported a 13% rise in net income in the third quarter, hitting a record as institutions' profits soared and expenses moderated. That goes to show you how powerful these organizations are and how much control they really have. This right here is interesting, something that I believe is very important. A top Senate Democrat is calling for increased scrutiny of China's ambitions in Hollywood and other sectors, lending a critical voice to cause championed by Donald Trump. And what are we talking about here? Well, essentially, talking about the takeovers of U.S. companies by China's Dalian Wanda group and others warrant further scrutiny to determine whether they are being orchestrated by the Chinese government interests. This is key. Now, it may not be the case, but shouldn't there be some extra scrutiny involved when there's these multi-billion-dollar industries being bought up by foreign governments? Doesn't matter if it's Chinese or not. Then he goes on. Possibly leaving U.S. companies to compete on an uneven playing field. The move increases the likelihood of a re-examination of how U.S. allows the nation to invest in American companies. And right here he says, I am concerned that the acquisitions reflect the strategic goals of China's government. I believe it is very important to address these, as they are very concerning. You never know what could happen if all the media was then owned by China, by another foreign government, of most of the media or what have you. All of a sudden, that media is now controlled by foreign interests. Doesn't mean that they are going to necessarily change their views or have particular views or anything, but it's probably the case. Look at this. Venezuela's currency is so devalued it no longer fits in ordinary wallets. In the picture here, this individual with a box of money, I mean, it's ridiculous, and that's not worth very much at all. It's practically garbage at this point. And the story from the article here basically talks about a guy who owns a little shop, and people are coming by paying him and all these bills, and the guy's got a bag of money sitting beside him. And then, it's very difficult because obviously it's one of the most dangerous cities in the world, Caracas, and people are suffering at this time. This is just the way it's going until the currency is completely destroyed. That's what they're going to take it to. They will definitely end up destroying the currency. That is an absolute fact. One other note here, this remote military base is where China blasts humans into space. Talking about China's space program, I just thought it would be interesting to mention the fact that here in a very remote location near the Gobi Desert, they're sending individuals. They haven't really disclosed all the details, but this is where they plan on expanding expanding their space program essentially, and then the intention is to send humans to Mars and the moon. So it seems like they are expanding their role in space, which obviously connects to the military aspect as well. FBI and the NSA poised to gain new surveillance powers under Trump. And this is, I do believe, something that could very well occur. And essentially what they're trying to say here is you have Trump, you have a Republican-controlled Congress, and the prospect that has privacy advocates and some lawmakers trying to mobilize opposition. And essentially he has gone, or the article has gone on to say, look, you have Jeff Sessions and Republican Representative Mike Pompeo for the director of the CIA, leading advocates for domestic government spying at levels not seen since September 11, 2001. Okay, all I will say is they may go ahead, they may increase the amount of domestic spying that they do. However, what is it actually being used for? Is it being used to target those who are terrorists? Or is it being used like after this, September 11th, with the Patriot Act, which was never used ever, to my knowledge, to actually apprehend a terrorist? Instead, it's used domestically in order to get people on completely unrelated crimes. That's the difference that I want to note. Forget about the issue, whether you think it's going to happen or not. I just want to know, if they do it, is it going to be targeting people for completely unrelated crimes? That's what I'm seeing today. So we'll see how it works out tomorrow. We'll move on to the next article here. This is absurd. Something that has been, it's been going on for a while. California regulates cow farts. This is not a joke, although it's out of Fox News. Essentially saying that, look, cows produce methane gas, and that is a hazard to the environment. Therefore, we should regulate it. And what does regulating it mean? That means that you will have to pay higher taxes. That's all this means. It's trying to make it so expensive that you cannot afford to purchase it, and therefore you will have less pollution. I mean, it's a very, very silly tactic, and it seems like it's going on now for quite some time. I do believe that this is the worst way to have any sort of change in the climate, but that's where we are today. And last but not least, Just Eat makes history with world's first takeaway delivered by robot. This individual ordered as she normally did and receives a robot at her door delivering the goods. I thought it was interesting that even delivery services are now being outsourced to robots. Something that's, it's, I would say, very minimal at this time. But in the next few years, we're going to see that expand dramatically. And this doesn't surprise me at all. More jobs will be lost to robotics and automation. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. So head over to Amazon where you can look through the book for yourself.